Thank you very much, Christelle, and welcome everyone. I've been seriously looking forward to this morning. I think Christelle asked me about end of July to facilitate this breakfast session, and it got me all excited. So here we are, 3 months later, and thank you for deciding to spend your time to share in our learning and to share your experience with us as well, because we want this to be a very interactive session. So I just want to go to a slide or two. As I was thinking and journaling a lot during the lockdown period, and this is obviously the first crisis I have ever experienced on this scale. And in my own experience, I know we're not just talking about the pandemic, we're talking about any crisis. But just journaling in playing my role as mother and as friend and as teacher, as coach, I reflected on all the themes that came forth during the time that we were struggling quite a bit. And the first one that struck me was that it was chaotic. Look at our first picture. The guy's walking on a tightrope that's not even tight, and he walks with his suit not fitting at all. And all he sees is complexity. Everything is up in the air, everything is mixed up, and maybe also quite a bit uncertain. So from my experience, a lot of people experienced a lot of uncertainty. The second picture is that of multiple roads to be chosen. And in especially coaching my clients, they were, it was not clear which road to take. Everything changed in a jiffy. There was just no script for business. A lot of the visions, objectives, and everything was out the door. So although there were some possibilities of roads, they all looked a bit cranky, if you can see on that picture. It looks a bit cranky. If you look close by, it doesn't seem like anyone has taken that road before. So daunting to choose direction and to actually, it's almost like going with a pencil to make your plan and erase as you go, because you know things might change. Thirdly, it's clear that people who were open to thinking differently, once they were over the shock, opened their minds to new possibilities, were coping much better. And especially teams of people who came together and co-created possibilities. So that is a very big plus for us to think differently about things and to say, can't I behold different possibilities for my organization? And then work on what's plausible instead of just getting stuck inside our own anxiety. The fourth one is resilience. Truly learned myself, and I've helped others, and they've helped me build up resilience during this time. And this makes me often think of the water crisis we had in 2017 and 18, where one day I opened the tap and there was just mud. And only speaking of Cape Townians now, but we really pulled together, not just through prayer, but through a lot of practical measures to actually save water and that build up our resilience in our own way. So this period made me think back to the drought, and I accessed actually the journaling that I did during the drought, and it helped me a lot. So in terms of trust and teams, that is so important. If ever had been important, this is the time to actually reach out. We can't always touch each other because we can't be together, and we all miss that, but to reach people, to communicate candidly, openly, and continuously in building trust, and to be honest with them about what things are, how things are, and how they are not. And let's dare to dream. My last picture. Let's dare to dream of a day when our business thrive again, and then work back to what are the plausible options and not the other way around. So that's a little bit from my own personal experience. This slide is my last one. It is Again, when Christelle invited me to facilitate this, I was thinking what would be the most appropriate topic. I took a month to do a very systematic scan of very recent publications, both academic and reports from organizations. And I found the little box of reference, the respond, recover, rebuild, quite a nice one to plot the themes that I discovered in reading against. And this little framework, respond, recover, rebuild, I borrowed from Renjen, Unit Renjen. He is the global CEO of Deloitte. And it's on the recovery phase that we're going to focus this morning. I know we might all not be there, but I really thought this day should be about hope, about how to move through the crisis, and therefore the pencil in our logo. From the current reality to a new possible reality, and we're definitely going through it, even if it's with a pencil and we need to erase sometimes. Just in terms of the reading, a lot has been covered in terms of recovery phase, and they say we need a new strategy and we need operating procedures. Very different ones maybe from what we've had before. We need to unite people behind the purpose, a vision and goal, and these might be new. We might have discovered that our vision is not plausible anymore, but it's very important to actually, even if it's a short-term one, to think about that, to gather everyone around by building trust and managing change for yourself as well as others. And then, of course, our stakeholders, we wouldn't be there if it wasn't for our stakeholders and our shareholders. So we need to be very responsive to very quick changing demands from all our stakeholders, and that is quite a tough one. So we need to develop agile thinking and agile execution. Risk mitigation, financial stability, I don't want to be too heavy on that today, because the focus on today is firstly, how did leaders cope through this crisis? How do they cope through crises? And what are the skills that they have embraced in terms of coping, not just coping, doing well, and maybe even thriving? Secondly, I wanted to speak to coaches, because this is an opportunity for us coaches to say, what did coaching help with during this time? Did it play a role? What role did it play? And we're going to hear from two very reputable and successful leaders, as well as two very reputable and successful coaches. So without further ado, I'd like to go on and introduce Piet Naudé. Well, first of all, the program. So the program is quite tight, but it's a nice variation. I'm going to introduce Piet Naudé. He's going to talk to us for 20 minutes. Every speaker will have 20 minutes to talk, and then we'll engage in 10 minutes of questions. So as Christelle said, please engage with us in the chat box, or when the question time is opened up, the floor is opened up, please engage virtually with us. So Piet Naudé, captain of our ship at the USB. Piet did his doctoral degree in systematic theology at the University of Stellenbosch. He was then a senior lecturer in biblical studies, University of Venda, a full-time pastor at the Dutch Reformed Church, professor in biblical and religion studies at UPE, and dean and vice rector in MMU. He came full circle back to his alma mater, Stellenbosch, to be our leader for the last 5 years. And so I know Piet hates these long introductions, but sorry, no can do a short one on you, Piet. Piet's big passion is public ethics and social justice. He writes about it prolifically, he talks about it, he lives it. So Piet has written over 100 academic journal articles, more than 150 national, international conference papers delivered, 12 books and 5 chapters in the books. My book, Piet, that I'm reading at the moment is Stories vir die Lewe van Omnibus, and I'm loving it. So over to Piet, whose topic is Leadership Matters in a Crisis, but which key competencies are required?
Salomé, thank you very much, colleagues, for that introduction, and welcome to everyone. I see people from Mauritius. I hope you open your borders to us soon. We would love to be on your beaches. I see Namibia. We've just missed the hunting season, I think, so that's too late for us, but happy to have you guys on board and all over different stakeholders in South Africa. At USB, we really like to be a place of networking, so thank you so much for this morning. And when Salomé asked me to make a few comments at the beginning this morning, I immediately said this would be a great honor for me to do that. I have to, just like a good academic, always first start with a disclaimer. I am no professor of leadership. I'm a professor of ethics. So I've not done an extensive literature review on leadership. It seems to me like a very complex and even confusing field. So I rather speak from practice, because I think, like any skill, you can write a lot about it, but it is, you learn it in the doing. So I've been thinking a little bit about the few crises that I had to lead through, specifically in the context of higher education, but also in consulting with business out there. And I came up with 4 competencies that I think spring to my mind, at least, and they link up with some of the stuff that Salomé referred to as well a little bit earlier. So I'll jump right in. And the first one is what I would call a leadership's capability to be present. What happens in a crisis is that people draw back into the safe spaces of their own environment, whether that be in a big organization, virtually or physically, my office or my little space. Because what a crisis does is it threatens us. And our natural inclination when a threat comes is you try to defend yourself, you draw yourself back into your own safe space. And what then happens on an organizational level is you get what we call atomism. That means instead of being a culture of cooperation, a culture of social cohesion, you get an atomistic culture. That means all people are extremely busy, but the links between them are very, very weak, if existing at all, because you're busy with your own survival. And what then happens is that you find a dramatic drop in the social capital in an organization, and from my perspective, that is an absolute crucial element in a crisis, is to try as best as you can to restore and maintain an adequate level of social capital. So a leader in this situation has to act, and that's why you lead, counterintuitively. You cannot draw back and say, oh, I have to solve this crisis somewhere on my laptop late at night on my spreadsheets. The big thing is people want to see you, whether it's physically, in our case under COVID, it was virtually. And what I did was to just drop in at regular interviews to the different units that are under my leadership, show my face. Even if I can't stay for a whole meeting, I'm there. They know that the leader is not absent, the leader is there. And I think it's very important that you be seen in the crisis, although you might not have all the answers. It's very important. Your presence is not there to die groot basis hier en ek gaan julle sê wat om te doen. Sorry for the Afrikaans. It's not nothing like that. It's merely being present in a way that reassure the rest of the team that there is still social capital in this organization, and our leaders are there for us to provide the kind of social intelligence that is required. So I would say being present requires from leaders, firstly, a kind of social competency, which is difficult in a crisis because we are also human, and the counterintuitive measure to actually step out and be seen and be there for people, I think, is absolutely crucial. And then secondly, the question of care. a lot of literature has been written about women and men leadership, and that, you know, women has a more caring attitude, men has more a sort of decisive attitude. Well, I'm not sure that those broad categories are not in themselves already, again, forms of presuppositions. I think this is not gender-based. It is personality and leadership style-based to show care. And what I mean with this is a crisis normally is a disruptive event. Otherwise, we would not call it a crisis. And what a disruptive event does is it disorientates you. So your normal road, the picture that Salomé showed earlier, where, you know, your Google Maps is deur mekaar. It can't guide you where to go. You run into cul-de-sacs. Your link with the satellite is not that good. So you are disorientated, and that has an unsettling effect on people. And then what I've noticed in times of crisis is a very interesting mix of emotions that are displayed by people. And if people respond differently, you get people who fall into fear. They don't know. Some more into anxiety. They're not sure of what they're afraid. The difference between fear and anxiety is fear as an exact object which you've seen as a threat, whereas anxiety is this feeling of things are not good. I don't feel well. I'm not sure why. Then sadness, especially in times when you have to go into retrenching of people or reducing of staff or dropping salaries. Then the feeling of helplessness. I can't do anything. Management must do everything. I'm just a small cog in the wheel. And then I've also picked up sometimes anger and blame. And sometimes if a crisis is an act of God, like the virus was, it's very difficult to blame, but some religious people would even blame God for that. And this mixture of emotions puts people in a very vulnerable position to function efficiently. And this is where leadership is now important. In that situation, a leader must firstly be mature enough to demonstrate her own or his own vulnerability. A leader is not a superhuman. It's not that if you're a leader, you're sort of above the psychology of the normal Homo sapiens. You are also subject to disorientation, unsettling, fear, anxiety, blame, and so forth. But a leader, because you are a leader, are mature enough to recognize that and to communicate that as a form of synthetic competency. And sympathos in Greek means I have the ability to understand your emotion and feel with you. And this is important. I'm therefore able to stand with you in your own shoes. And then I show my concern for your wellness. I show concern for your personal wellness, but I also show concern for organizational wellness. And I've seen this during the crisis at quite a number of times. Salomé, if I may just refer to our own experience, the kind of social competency was the regular checking meetings with people. We could not meet physically. And the synthetic competency came in where we said if people would require coaching, they're welcome to contact ABC at the university and also in a network that Salomé created for us. We had 1 or 2 special sessions on well-being under lockdown conditions to show our synthetic competence. At some point, we created a space for people to share their stories, because not everybody was locked up in a nice house with only one child that's, 18 years old and wise. So we try to build in the synthetic competencies along the way so that people could understand that, my emotions are real, but I'm not alone. There are other people that have the same kind of experience, and more than that, they feel with me, and in that way we can restore some form of care with a social face within our organization. But I mean, you cannot stay there. The third one is what I would call the decisiveness and the interpretive competency. What do I mean with that? A crisis is typically, in Kotler's world, creating a burning platform. Suddenly everything is in question. If you think of a place like USB, on the 27th of March this year, we had 2 or 3 programs that ran partially online, the rest were face-to-face. Our whole year was planned exactly at the 6th of September. The coaching group would be in class number 6. We run a careful school, so we plan extremely careful. And on the 27th of March, gone. And what a leader then has to do, and that's why I call it an interpretive competency, you don't go into action immediately. You're going to make mistakes. You have to first do what I would call a critical assessment of the situation. That's where the interpretive or heuristic, or if you want a bigger word, a hermeneutic ability come in. You immediately have to interpret your own environment, but you also have to be sharp enough to interpret the context in which your business or organization function. And once you've done that interpretation, hopefully as good as you can, it will never be perfect because it's a crisis. Then you have to act. And you have to act quickly. And there's the limit of democracy. You cannot consult too much. You don't have the time. After that interpretation that you may want to do probably in a team context, that's why Salomé referred to the importance of teams. I can just tell you that in a crisis, it shows you whether you've got good people or mediocre people or bad people. Quickly, because how quickly they can step up to interpret and help you interpret the context. And then you have to act. And I want to make this also very, very clear. Your actions may not all be perfect in the sense that they lead to the desired outcome. But in a real crisis, you cannot predict the desired outcome. So there's a much higher risk associated with your action. But to remain inactive would be simply to succumb to the crisis. You cannot do that. So not to talk too much about USB, but in our case, within a matter of 12 or 13 working days, we interpreted the environment and understand all education and communication will run virtual for the next few months, whether it's business meetings, whether it's training, whether it's work from home, whatever the case might be. So we immediately realized our students around the world, and remember they come literally from around the world, will not travel to USB. We cannot stop the year. Our income is dependent on that. And within a case of less than 2 weeks, we've done a redesign of all our programs to go online. And what was extremely tight, and I can tell you this is 14, 15, 16-hour days where we had to retrain all our academic staff and our support staff, excuse me, to make this transition in a very quick way. Fortunately, we made some investment in advance. We were not that deeply behind the curve, but it was a massive, massive crisis, and we had to act extremely quickly and fast. And I must say, most of those actions were the right ones, some of them not, and we can make that adjustment later. So decisiveness is linked to the interpretive competency, and that is required in a crisis. The last one, McDonald, if you want to, is what Salomé also referred to, is what I would call the futuring competency, the imaginative competency. What a crisis does, it drops a curtain in front of the eyes of the organization, and it pushes you back into the immediacy of the now. I somewhere wrote about this, and I think I used the word organizations and people in a crisis fall into a collapsed presence. I would like to repeat that. You fall into a collapsed presence. It's now and it is collapsed. And what that does is it takes away and limit your ability to lift up, open the curtain and look further. And at the beginning of a crisis, I must admit, I think it's almost impossible. The shock of the first few days, especially if it's an unexpected immediate crisis. And it happens in many companies. I can think of Steinhoff on the 5th of December, 2017, when the then CEO made an announcement around certain accounting irregularities, and within literally hours, the share price dropped from 95 to 6 Rand. It's a massive event, and obviously you cannot then say to the board that evening, listen guys, you must now imagine a new future for Steinhoff. I mean, that is simply humanly impossible. But you cannot stay there. And the very important self-management of a leader is to create inner crisis beyond the first immediate shock, what I would call thinking space, imaginative space. Because leaders are primarily futuring agents. And we have an Institute for Future Studies. Mornay Mostert and others are absolutely experts in this. I'm a theologian, so I know something about prophecy, and prophecy is not an unimportant thing. You can go back in the history of societies where religion played a role. Prophecies are extremely important functions to lift the eyes of peoples beyond the crisis of, say, the exile into the possibility of either a restoration, in the case of the Old Testament, Jerusalem or the Promised Land. So, I mean, this is very, very important work. So leaders have to keep their imaginative capacities alive. If you have a very strong vision and mission, it will probably, in most cases, withstand a crisis. It's very rare that a crisis necessarily means that the whole mission of the organization, what we do, is destroyed. USB today is still an organization of education, a management education, although our modes of delivery and modes of operation have dramatically changed. Our mission to provide world-class education has remained the same. So in a way, that should become your guiding post to think beyond the crisis, and then when the time is ripe to start communicating, those. So I want to end with that. You can just this slide for a moment. I'm not good with art, but I try to put the colors there for you. Every one of these competencies, Salomé, is in a different color. The warm orange of presence is our social capital. The green is our sympathetic competency, where we care for one another. The red is our action, the hot action that we have to take under tough circumstances. And the blue is, I can look beyond into the sky, guided by my mission and vision, and still imagine that my organization, although we will look differently, will survive beyond the crisis. And this is what I would call the 4 core competencies to take us through a crisis. The last slide just there to McDonald is to say thank you. A USB tagline remains value creation. We create a better world. That world might be virtual, it might be VUCA, it might be different. We don't mind. We continue doing value creation like we do this morning. Thank you. You can take my slides off the screen.
Thank you, Piet. That was very insightful. And what really caught my attention was not just sympathy to understand, try and understand people standing in their own shoes, but to be with them in their own shoes. Yeah. That is truly a deep level of empathy, and appreciate that. In fact, I must tell you from my heart, you have provided that space for us during this lockdown. With your regular check-ins with us, with your own vulnerability, you made it possible for other people to say that they're also not always coping. So,
I think the big thing is that we have this idea, Salomé, that that leaders are strong, they know, they lead, they're decisive, they're sharp, they're not upset. And I think the more human you are, but strong, the better you lead. So, if you can't understand your own emotions, obviously you can't understand other people's emotions. And it's a skill that you have to learn over the years to, one of my greatest, if I can think back on my own leadership, is when people came into my office and share a deep emotion with me because they trust me that I will not abuse their vulnerability, so that they can feel safe in that space. Now, if you multiply that in organization, you create a safe organization, and then people feel I can be myself. And from a purely business perspective, people that feel themselves and know they can express themselves are productive, they're happy, they're joyful, they move, man, they change the world. They don't mind to work late in the evenings. In fact, you always underpay them.
Exactly. Thank you for that and for your passion. I already have a few contributions, so I'm just move into a contribution and then some questions. Debbie said, morning, what helped our company during the disaster was the commitment and culture we have created prior to COVID. All employees embraced the changes and actions we needed to take to secure our business. They worked together, finding a workable solution. We are very blessed to have such a lovely workforce.
Oh, that's wonderful. Excellent. That's the kind of social capital I referred to earlier. And we had a fantastic example in business. You know, people always think business are just hard, capitalist. A quick example, I don't want to mention the company's name, but where a company had to choose between reduction in salary of XYZ percentage or retrenching, say, 6% of the people. And the social capital was strong enough for people to say, those at the top, we will sacrifice more than those at the bottom of the salary scale, but by doing that, we collectively can save our colleagues. It's a fantastic sense of altruism, which is contrary to our intuition about what capitalism is about, namely profit maximization after rational choice.
Thank you for that. And we'd like to also give, well, there's two questions. I'm going to handle the first one. Prof. Naudé, this comes from a Commensa leader. I like the concept of the leader being a futurist agent. How does a futuring agent continue to focus into the future without consulting other stakeholders? Given your assertion that the leader has no time to consult, especially in a crisis.
Yeah, I'll be very honest about that, and people might not like it the way I say it, but unfortunately that is my experience. As I say, I've not read many books, but I've done a few things. And I can tell you now, I cannot remember any good vision ever arising from a democratic consultation process. What happens in democratic consultations, you get very fantastic insights and additions and differences of views. But for the clarity of a vision, you need an imaginative mind, and that normally is one person, perhaps two if you're lucky. So I'm not afraid to say to my colleagues, listen, colleagues, and I've done it a few times in my life, you've appointed me as your leader. I think it's very good for Stellenbosch University Business School to move to Stellenbosch. I think our brand is disassociated from the university. We need a place close somewhere in the vineyards where we can build a school that will become what I would call the Davos in the vineyard. 2014 September. People laughed at me. They thought I was crazy. A lot of, the moment I went into consultation, people said, you're crazy. We don't want to go. Prof. Naudé, can we just ask, have you conducted a vote amongst the staff? And then the next question, have you asked our alumni their view? No, well, if I do that, we'll never move to Stellenbosch. Forget it. Democracy doesn't work sometimes, guys. In vision, on the battlefield and in an operating theater, no democracy.
Thank you for your insight, Prof. And I want to give Dave the floor. Dave, you had a question. Can you unmute yourself and share?
Yeah, thanks very much. Hi there. Yeah, the question is really, you know, I really like the humanitarian side of what you're bringing to this conversation. And I think that just one point of observation is my colleague Naudé is also on this call, and something that we found, something that was being thrown around quite often during lockdown is we're all in this boat together. And I think that that's so untrue. You know, some people are in a luxury yacht and some people are clinging to a lifeboat. So I think that it's been very interesting to see that play out. But my question is, how do we change the status quo in terms of people's mindsets? Because I find that with a lot of the people that I deal with and organizations that I deal with, you know, Salomé said that we need to have agile thinking in terms of surviving and thriving throughout this crisis. But people still hold very close those singular mindsets, and they're very scared of change. And the comment that I made was change and embracing it is probably the newest form of currency in this place that we find ourselves. So
Yeah.
how do we change those mindsets quickly? Because people don't like to change. And I think that as management, that's one of our biggest tasks, is to try and mold people to be who they need to be.
Yeah. No, thank you very much, Dave, for that very, very valuable contribution. Salomé, may I quickly respond?
You're very welcome, Prof.
Welcome. So good to hear these different voices. Firstly, just a comment. One of the most important things that we did during lockdown was to recognize the radically different conditions under which people were locked. And Dave, I'll never forget the morning when we were with all our staff, and one of the staff members started to cry and say, you know, I don't want to make a specific thing because we're in a public space, but you know, looking after my mother with 2 small children, 1 3, 1 5, all the schools are closed, I have to work. I just simply can't do this. I had one colleague sending me an email and say, Piet, please, I now sleep during the day and work during the night. That's my only time that I've got is between 2 and 5. I saw emails from her coming through at 2:10 in the morning. So Dave, we are all in this together. It's a joke. We are not all in this together in the same way. Some of people have found the lockdown as the best time of their lives. Others have found an otherwise. Point taken. Question about change. There's a whole you know, strategy about change. It's a very complex topic, and it also depends on the nature of the organization. But you know, obviously, you push me into a one-liner. I would say if you can create a clear vision, and then very immediately start to take first small steps that affect that. What you then do is you push people, you nudge them out of their blocks, but you don't throw a bomb under them. You know, the burning platform idea is okay, but I'm not always too keen on that, because what happens after the burning platform? You need to still build social capital and resilience along the way. So what I have found work best is, as good as you can, formulate, okay guys, it's very clear we can't function as we do now. I think this is where we should be go. Now let us take the first small steps to do that. But then those steps must be short, the feedback circuit must be short, and the control over them must be strong. If it doesn't happen, then there's a problem. So I expect you, in 10 days, that must be done. And then I think, Dave, so you can see how I work. I mean, you must be kind, but it doesn't mean you're just a laissez-faire leader. Things must happen at a certain time. And once those first steps become a realization, then the bigger ones become easier. Sorry, it's not a good answer, but the best one in my minute. Thanks, Dave.
Thank you, Piet, and thank you, Dave. And just one more contribution before we move over, unless there's any more questions. Clear, Andre says, we need to be clear and regular in our communication. It's critical in a crisis. Most of us work remotely, which makes the need for presence even higher. And communication assisted a lot in this regard. Okay. So I think we experienced with you, Piet, regular communication, candid communication, and clear as much as possible.
Yeah, I think if ever, you know, if you would have allowed me now an hour, I would have added other competencies, and one that I almost had wanted to put in, Salomé, just because of time, is the whole idea of communicative competency, which is, and may I just say, communication is not only emails, it is also attitude. It is also the spirit of the communication. You know, I'm a scholar of written texts. I've studied 7 languages. I've read many extremely difficult books in Hebrew, in Greek, in German, in Dutch, in English, in Afrikaans. And what that told me was, it's not the letter that counts, it's the spirit. And, you know, I've had many cases where I said, maar ek het dan vir jou dit gesê in 'n email. Well, that's not communication. You can transport information on an email, but you cannot properly communicate in an email. So it's a bit more complicated than that. So, but that's for another day.
Okay. Thank you, Piet. Comensa, I don't know the gentleman's first name. Please let me know your first name. Says the feedback circuit must also be short. For positiveness is positive for decisiveness. Okay, so Piet would not like to, I not want to ask this question to Piet because he will take another half an hour, but please ponder on this one. And it is from Conius. Piet, to what extent do we see the 4 competencies being applied at the national level by our president, Mr. Cyril Ramaphosa? But I'm gonna leave that for thinking time. And
yeah, let's move to politics a bit later. Is Ramaphosa a fake president or a real leader? Very interesting question.
Yeah.
Salomé, thank you so much for you guys for having me this morning. I have to go for a family responsibility, but I appreciate your time, and I will definitely watch the recording. So those of you who come after me, I will listen and learn from you as well. Thank you so much.
Thank you for being with us. We appreciate you.
See you guys.
Thank you. So I'm going to introduce to you Godfrey Motsa. Is Godfrey in the room? Godfrey, you here?
Yes, I am.
Cool. Welcome. Good to see you.
Thank you.
Godfrey is the CEO of MTN South Africa. He does his MBA at the Thames Valley University in the UK, besides other qualifications. He's decided very early, he said, in his career that he wants to foster the internet revolution in developing markets. That was his passion. And he's certainly living that passion as well. So he makes it real. If you look at his career, he started as an intern and in MTN, 1995. He was senior brand manager in Kellogg's South Africa and in Coca-Cola South Africa. And from there, he just went up all the way to be very senior, to handle successfully very senior leadership roles in both Vodacom and MTN. Godfrey received the 2019 My Broadband Award for the IT Person of the Year. Well done on that, Godfrey. And I couldn't help but just quickly pop in this little piece on the right. When I looked at your profile, I searched more about you, that MTN SA execs forego increases and channel funds to employees. I think you're a very abundant person, and if you have time, just to touch on that. So very welcome. Godfrey, his topic is business leadership in an existential crisis. Over to you, Godfrey.
Thank you very much, Salome. I'm with my colleague here, Tabiso, and he's the one also running the slides.
No problem.
Yeah. In my discussions today, I will basically talk about business leadership in this existential crisis that we basically face. I think it's important to mention upfront that I'm a really big believer in never wasting a good crisis. Every cloud has a silver lining. So even though things are tough today, but I really believe that we keep our heads down, we do the right things, we'll be able to emerge stronger as a people, as a country, and also as humanity. Mr. T, without further ado, if you can go to the slides. I didn't take it for granted that everybody knows who MTN is. So I basically put some basic information here. We born in 1994. We really call ourselves as a freedom company. I think like most of the cellular companies really were born in 1994. And it's something that we really don't take for granted. It's something that we really do. And we really believe it has enabled us to basically go out all to these countries we operate and be able to well received and to prosper. We currently have 21 countries. And then we've got over 260 million customers. We always look at our customers from a total telephony. We look also on a data perspective. We've got over 100 million data customers today. And then we've got over 40 million mobile money. If you think about the MTN we have today, it's telephony, it's data, it's mobile money, also pushing now on digital services. And then all these things that we do at the core, we have this saying that everyone deserves the benefits of a modern connected life. So with the progressive mindset is an inclusive mindset. This is not really to brag, but we are actually the largest telecom company in Africa by revenue, by customers, and by profits. In South Africa, we basically invest a lot. In the last 5 years, we've spent over 50 billion rands. Again, we spend this level of monies to just make sure that from an infrastructure perspective, South Africa does not really fall behind. And it's also important for us that the digital revolution requires universal access. We always say that in the 21st century, there is no country that can prosper without a proper digital infrastructure. And what we do at the core at MTN is to invest and make sure that we build the best infrastructure from basically from the Cape to the Piet bridge, if I can speak at geographic analogies. From an employee perspective, we have almost 5,000 direct employees and over 20,000 people working for our system. That is basically from people in our stores, people building our towers, maintaining our towers, people looking after our online environment, our call centers. So it's a very, very broad and a big church. Finally, from a population coverage, I think building on the previous point I've basically made around the core belief of universal access, of bridging digital divide, we actually have over 99% of people able to at least make a voice call on our network. The most advanced network we actually have today at scale is the 4G network, where you actually, like today on this call, I'm basically relying on the 4G network. We have expanded that to 96% of all populations in this country. It's the widest population coverage by any scale for any meaningful country in the emerging markets, and definitely in the African continent. Mr. T. That was just about MTN, but what is important for me to speak about today is around what you call striking a balance between profit and purpose. Because today's customer is a much smarter customer, but he also has got a conscience. He's really cares about how he spends his money. And if you look at the whole topics of sustainability moving forward, it's a very, very important point. We're even experiencing pressure from our own investors that we can't just be a business that collects cash, but looks the other way when it comes to societal issues. So at MTN, we're very striving to strike a balance, and we couldn't basically find, I think, a better quote than the one from Simon Mainwaring around today's consumers really being eager to become loyal to those companies with purposeful capitalism. That's what we are really using to basically guide us moving forward. I think in the coming slides, I will demonstrate a bit as to what we're doing. Mr. T. Here's what I'm grappling with today, and I don't think it's just me. I will argue that almost every CEO, actually every executive, almost a lot of people as well have to deal with this. First of all, it's really been the escalating infection rates, albeit it has eased in the recent weeks, and we've seen ourselves also going to a level 1 starting from next week. We have almost 5,000 staff, and at MTN, we experienced over 300 infections. So we have to make sure, especially for our staff, that are basically frontline, because we are classified as essential service. We need to protect those people as a company. And one of the things that I did was to make sure that all the customers that are basically at the front line, we do mass testing so that we know where they basically are. And then that's why we're able to find that over 300 of our employees were actually positive. We're to support them through and through with counseling, of course, the test as well. And then also when we're at fatalities, we're to help and look after help the families, help with the burial. So the point of really being compassionate was really very important. But it's not just only being compassionate. The most important thing is to protect them. So safety really became very important. So from the PPEs, from the guidelines on social distancing, from wearing masks, from having the screen guards and all those things. Then the second point that we have to deal with was the economic recession and job losses. I had to basically give our employees assurance, maybe we're using the word loosely, assurance, that at MTN there are no plans around mass retrenchment. We'll do everything to preserve jobs. That does not mean we guarantee jobs for life. But if their retrenchment is a structural one, it's a well-considered position. We'll rather reform a job, we'll rather retrain a person than fire a person or retrench a person. So we have basically not announced any major recessions at MTN, and we're not really planning to be doing that as well. That doesn't mean that won't happen. But as I say, job preservation is really important. Around then, issue we have to deal with is the lockdown impact on business operations. Our stores were closed for more than a month. We thought the legislation said we could open them because we're essential services, but we locked, those were locked. The ports where we import all the infrastructure, even the phone that I use, most of the phones are not basically made here. All those ports were locked. So it was really difficult for us. We need to really be agile and find ways of basically dealing with this. Lastly, but not least, the social impact of the lockdown on people's psychology, on their anxiety. I had to really make sure, not just me, also my leadership, that I self-motivate and also motivate the people that I basically work with, because these are really not normal times. We are social creatures. Immediately, you can't touch the people, you can't see the people, you do not know what this virus, some people say the virus basically hangs around in the air for 8 hours, sitting on everywhere you are. So it was really very difficult times, but the more we learn about the virus, the more we encourage each other, the more we demonstrate that we take safety seriously, the more we demonstrate that we take job preservation seriously, it's become much easier for me to really lead the organization and to keep our teams, I would say, excited and motivated. Mr. T. So this is just a screenshot on how we work today. I think this was early this week. So we have what is called the senior leadership team every week, and not every week, every month. So you will see that over 60 people basically log on. There's really the top 80 people in the organization. The important thing today is that physical spaces are important, but what is key is connectivity, because the office today is in the office park, but it's also at home. Those are the main spaces where people basically work. And fortunately for an organization like MTN, why the core of that? Because we provide connectivity. I believe that even if you go to level 0 and basically go back to normal, we have a vaccine. This change is not going to go away. The future office is going to be at home, it's going to be in the office park, it's going to be mobile, it's going to be everywhere you go or everywhere you want to be. But what is critical is that there should be connectivity everywhere. So when we say we want universal coverage where people are, to be honest with you, our purpose and the needs of the society today and in the future, we really believe we're in a sweet spot. Mr. Key. These are really some of the guidelines that I am using in this crisis that I'm going to talk about, and then also what I'm planning to be using basically moving forward. Kind of like refer to this point, we need to show love, compassionate leadership for our employees. We need to listen with curiosity and purpose. One of the love that we show for our employees was that our salary increases this year as our executives, we forgo for the full year. And then we created a fund for our employees. It was not just only my executives, but also our group did the same thing. And also our board of directors did the same thing. And then with that fund, we were able then to distribute the cash to our employees. Of course, our employees are smart enough to understand what they do with the cash. Some of them are able to buy, let's say, laptops, or to top up on the laptops for their employees, to set up themselves with a data package, to basically help their families and so on and so forth. We don't have to dictate what they do with what you basically give them. So that's what we're really doing for this year. But it's not just basically that. We've also made sure that every employee has the tool of trade in the organization. And then we've also made sure that every employee now has at least 100 gigs of data. We know that they do just working, you're not going to use 100 gigs, but guess what? Now you have to help your family with homework, and then the organization has the capacity to help you with that. So the whole thing of really empathy for MTNers, that's what we call ourselves, if we basically work there. It helps with engagement, it helps with motivation. Mr. T. The second part is businesses, as much as they don't only exist to make money, if they can't make money, they're no longer sustainable. So you have to still keep your eyes on the main prize, that making sure that you satisfy your financial stakeholders. We basically are a healthy business. Fortunately for us at MTN, it's a very healthy business. It's a highly profitable business. It also invests a lot. It competes a lot. But also in our finances, we have to look at the societal pressure. One of the big things. I think somebody forgot to mute. Yeah. So one of the areas that we have to deal with is the data prices. The data must fall. Year to date, the prices have gone down by over 33%. It's still not enough, but of course we engaged with the government, with the spectrum, we'll be able to reduce that a bit more. You can see what happened to the traffic. The traffic is up 88%. So this was just a highlight to say that from a business perspective, even though we are faced with a serious pandemic, the business had actually been able to be stable and to also eke out some growth in other areas. You see that the EBITDA, which is the profit, basically was still able to grow 3% year to date. The other area is around engagement. I really think in this period and moving forward, business models, strategic engagement will really be key for somebody to be sustainable as an entity, even as a country. And the stakeholders are very different, very varied, and they pursue different agendas. You have to deal with ICASA in our situation. You have to deal with the Johannesburg Stock Exchange. We have to deal with the CW, our unions. We have to deal with data scientists that we hire in the organization. But what I am proud of this year is that the government, the industry, we have been able to be given temporary spectrum. We've been asking for spectrum for over 10 years. And with that spectrum they gave us, we're able to give over 700 sites to be zero rated, to be free. A lot of students, whether it's at universities or in high school or even in primary school, are able to get in those sites so they can learn. Of course, we're also able to leverage the spectrum so that you don't have to spend more money building more sites. So win-win situations. We really believe that collaborations, strategic engagements, it really helps a lot. Those social compacts, if I can call social pacts, yeah, between industries, between government, private, public, it really helps in basically solving, I would say, fundamental issues. And I would argue it should actually be encouraged. It should actually be a model basically moving forward. When we talk about not wasting a good crisis, these are some of the examples. Such that now for the first time, again, in over a decade, we have a firm date to basically say by Q1 next year, the spectrum will finally be made available at commercial basis to the players in the industry. That helps South Africa, it helps MTN in the industry a lot. Mr. T. Equally important is to look after yourself. I have a personal coach, her name is Sunny. I think she's well known to this university. She's a tough coach, but guess what? Everybody needs someone pointing out the areas that they need to exist and they need to improve on. I tell my team that I'm sure that even Mandela had people who had to tell him where to improve. We are not perfect on our own. We need to make sure that we've got people who can basically help us with our self-awareness, with our environment, can really strengthen how we show up, how we position ourselves, how we basically lead, and how we also come through, because sometimes you may not be coming or you may not be registering the way you think you are. So Sunny, really thank you for what you do for me personally in strengthening me as an executive, and also to the team, because I think your presence and your guidance just goes way beyond me. It also goes to my team. Second part is that you need to be alive to be able to do stuff. And executive life is tough. So when gyms were basically closed, it was interesting for me. I started doing walks. So some of the meetings that I can't do, basically being on TV like I am now, just as an audio, I basically take a walk. I try to do 10,000 steps a day. Okay, maybe I do it 4 times or 5 times a week, which is pretty good. So I went for my medical, and then the doctors, they were very, very proud of me that, yeah, I'm not blaming the pandemic, and then I'm basically letting down my health. So the whole exercise and healthy habit is really very important. I personally believe in moderation, to be honest with you. I don't think now you have to basically stop everything because you are trying to be super healthy. The other part is the positive mindset. It's tough times, but this is not the only crisis we've really gone through. And us as a country, we've gone through a lot to be where we are today. And we still envy, a positive envy to the world around what we've achieved. We have a lot to celebrate for, and we've got a lot to look forward to. There's no point for us to really be negative. And the positive mindset also begets positive actions. And especially when you're in the forefront leading people, it's really important to inspire them with positivity. I'm not talking about the fairy stuff, but as I say to the teams in SA, we provide digital solutions, and the future is digital. People need us. When you say the economy has to recover, it's companies like MTN that need to invest. It's people like us that will be in the forefront. And society, the only constant in life is change. Things are changing all the time. Let's take advantage. Transformative thinking. Yeah, I'm not talking just about demographic representation. I'm talking about us taking advantage of the emerging opportunities, both in the ways of work, commercially, agile thinking, digital solutions, being a platform business, looking at new talent that's required, and so on and so forth. So all these initiatives really important for us. And then last but not least, the team. I can't succeed on my own. I am not a John Rambo. I only have one brain, 2 hands, 24 hours a day. If I don't have a strong team, I'm not basically going anywhere. Again, Sunny has helped me a lot, with all due respect, around building teams. When you get to the, my ex-boss, Rob Shooter, our outgoing executive group president, he used to say that When you're still junior in the organization, things are black and white. But as you rise, things start becoming gray. And the greatest of leaders are those who can excel in the gray stuff. And to be able to navigate the gray stuff, we need strong teams. If you're not working as a collective, you are not an honest team, you're not pulling together, you're not supporting each other, you're not holding each other accountable, honest to each other, there's no way. I'm not going to use examples because I think that's a bit disrespectful if I start quoting dysfunctional teams in leadership or in government or in politics or in soccer or in rugby or in companies. If you can't really get that through, it becomes impossible. You can't push the ocean liner like MTN or a big task without a team. There's an executive team, then there's teams throughout the organization. At the end of the day, everything has to hold together. So again, I just have to really acknowledge and really thank my team for helping us be where we are today and navigating through this difficult time. Mr. T, they want me to close now. This is the last part around cherishing South Africa. This is the only place we can call home. For South Africa to go forward, it can't go forward on its own. We all need to do our bit. From an MTN perspective, the commitment I give you, we'll continue to invest, we'll continue to compete fairly, we'll continue to look after our customers, our people. Safety for our people and our customers remain really very, very paramount. So when you look after yourself, you look after your people, you look after your country, you will be able to really have a future that we all basically want to see. Mr. T. There's just basically a summary of the things I spoke about. Love for your employees, keeping the company alive, make sure you've got strategic alignments with the key stakeholders, look after yourself, and then look after your country. And then that's really how we roll in this situation. It's nothing complicated, it's not rocket science, but it requires a lot of work and a lot of focus and a lot of honesty, leadership honesty, intellectual honesty. Mr. Chair, I want to presume this should be my final slide. Can I play the ad that just kind of demonstrate what was do, yeah? Godfrey. Okay. Just asking people to wear masks. I know there are leaders who did not even want people to be wearing masks. So we are encouraging our people to basically wear masks. Mr. T, are you able to play it on your side?
يا ولد سأخبر أمك.
Attends que je le dise à ta mère. So put a mask on, or else we'll tell your mom.
Thank you, guys. So this ad, basically we are flighting it throughout the footprint. You'll see the opening scene is in Arabic, then the other one is in Zulu, then the other one is in French. So basically our board held the view that we have a responsibility, because if you look at all the options people have today beside washing hands and social distancing is to wear masks. So we basically flighting. In the month of September, we suspended almost all our commercial advertising so that we can really push this message. Team, thank you very much, and thank you for having me.
Thank you so much, Godfrey. That was truly meaningful. It's great to see that you're not just a great leader in business, but you're definitely a very abundant leader who cares, who shows compassion, not just sorry, but also doing something about that by using the funds to care for your staff, by making sure they all get well. It's wonderful to see that. It surely shows us that great leaders, their companies will do great. It's when you care with your people and your teams, you look after them, they will look after you, and things will happen. So thanks so much for that. I want to read to you. I think I'm going to ask Mukadi to tell Godfrey himself. Mukadi, are you? Mukadi is the president of Comensa. You wanted to share something with Godfrey? Hello, Mukadi.
You might be mute.
It's coming. I'll read it to you. I'll read it to you in the meantime. Mr. Godfrey Motsa, and I thank you for your opening statement on every cloud has a silver lining. Do I hear you to be saying, irrespective of the current macroeconomic challenges in our country, we should not allow hopelessness, despair, and despondency to negatively influence our optimistic view of the future? Godfrey, just your response to that, please.
Totally, that's really what I mean. That's because what I'm saying is that this country has really faced a lot of challenges before, but we have always risen above that. Of course, it can't just be through hope and prayer. That's also important. We still need to do something. So we need to still take responsibility. So institutions like yourselves, guys, you invest in the skills that the country basically needs. You also change the skills that are basically required. I might have touched on stuff like data scientists. It's interesting that in the business today, it's one of the most sought after skill sets. And we're basically getting people mostly from places like Stellenbosch. So we need to do our part. We need to keep our head down. We still need to invest. Really, really very important, because if we don't invest, then you can't really grow. If you can't invest, you can't build anything new. You end up in the situation like you have, I'm saying this with all due respect, at ESCOM. Through poor investment, infrastructure goes backwards, and then it sucks a lot from the economy. So we are the people we've been waiting for. It's not going to be somebody else coming out there to fix it for us. We have to do it ourselves. And yes, we can.
Okay.
Yeah.
Cool. I like that. Yes, we can. And then
yeah,
Susan, do
like I copied somebody.
you want to talk to us? I think we have sound problems with our friend. There was a question here from, if I may proceed. I've lost it a bit. Give me a minute. Susan Govender wants to know, Godfrey, what behavior and leadership competency would we require as we find new ways to drive collaboration across remote and hybrid teams, whilst also supporting colleagues struggling with wellness and family concerns?
One of the things interesting, it's a good question, because we spoke about this with the team.
Mm-hmm.
I would argue that agility and flexibility will really be very important moving forward. I will explain why. I think one of the points that's happening is people are going to be working from home and people are going to be working from the office. Some people will be there physically, some people will be there virtually. From a leader perspective, you can't be a leader that manages by walking around. I need to see everybody basically being here. You need to be flexible that, guess what? I have to manage output more than managing hours, if I can put it that way. And then the second part is, if you also look at how solutions are created today, especially areas around design thinking. The way we go to market now, you've got engineers and marketers and financials and HR practitioners sitting together through a whiteboard, whether virtually or physically, working on solutions together. Because nobody really owns the wisdom for end to end. Again, if there's no flexibility on that, you're not going to achieve it. Okay. And the other thing then is agility, which is really practically speed to market, speed of doing things. Whether you are the NPA having to prosecute corrupt people, If you lack agility, it's going to take you 10 years or 5 years. Or whether you're an MTN trying to blanket the country with 5G, you need to be able to move from idea to execution or to outcome at the shortest possible time. Otherwise, you get out-competed. So agility, from a leadership perspective, from a ways of work perspective, from a team perspective, really very important. We just to play another important point around the health of employees. Some employees have got chronic illnesses, underlying illnesses. And I think we all know we can't be expecting them to be coming to crowded spaces. It's not good for them, it's not good for other people as well. We need to show a lot of empathy for those people. We need to be able to be agile and flexible in dealing with them as well. So it has to be inclusive, it has to be agile, and it has to be flexible, and it has to be outcome-based. And because we can't have the outcome, you can't solve the problems.
Okay. We thank you for that. That was a very good summary of what you've also covered. Godfrey, we appreciate you very much. Thank you for your time, for the prep time, for being here, and for especially sharing how coaching has assisted you during this time. We appreciate you a lot, and I'm going to give everyone a 5-minute break, please. I think we need to stretch. Thanks again.
Thank you. Thank you.
And I hope you had a good break. We're halfway through, and it's all very exciting. So thank you so far to our speakers and to our audience. I'd love for you to actually engage a bit more, if you don't mind, on with questions and with your thoughts. So I am very happy and very delighted to introduce to you Khatija Saley. Khatija is the MD and founder of an organization, Generative Conversations. She has a master's in business management as well as professional coaching. She was the head of mentoring and coaching at Standard Bank Group and also a program director at the Duke Corporate Education. She has several very important and very credible associations here and internationally, and she's also a practitioner of narrative conversations. So Khatija was nominated in 2019 for the EMCC Global Coaching Award. That is the European Coaching and Mentoring company. So we hope we keep our thumbs for you, Khatija, because I don't think they've made the winners. What do you say? They haven't communicated the winners yet. Khatija lives by this Nancy Klein quote: "The quality of everything we do is dependent on the quality of the thinking we do first. How we think is determined by how we are treated." Over to you, Khatija. We're looking forward to your share.
Thank you, Salomé. Hello, everybody, and good to be online with you. Sorry, apologies for this. Are you able to see my presentation?
Yes.
Yes, we can.
Wonderful. I've been really excited and really encouraged by the conversation so far and what has emerged. And the slide that you see in front of you, I think alludes to what Salomé talked about, which is we are in the crisis, but what happens beyond? And from my observations of speaking to a multitude of leaders, I think we are already en route in terms of thinking about what that future might hold for us, in terms of what is required for us as leaders. So I think we're already en route. We're not stuck in what are we doing only in the crisis right now. I think some points that resonate with me with what Godfrey said, I think very much around investing in yourself, leading with purpose, and I think in adding on the component of sustainability, which is always a reciprocal relationship for business and a huge challenge. I think also around what Professor Naudé talked about, which is the fact that we have to admit that we are also human. I think that's the starting point for me. And hence, the title of my presentation is Leading with Humanity. I think there are lots of touch points which I will also highlight as I talk. But I think for me, this is a humanitarian crisis. We've had economic crises before. I think none of us have been in this kind of an unprecedented crisis. But I also think the thing that stood out for me through my various conversations is that this is about choice, your leadership choice and how you're going to respond during this time. And something that a client shared with me resonated with me, and this led me to thinking about the fact that this is not about a collective. The first choice that has to be made is by the leader themselves. And a leader talked to me about the heart of leadership excellence, and he said, you know, it was a concept for me. We talked about it in the organization, and I made a very dangerous assumption that people will want to follow me. And he said, I don't feel that way anymore. He said, actually, what I do recognize now that above everything, I now have to understand that the new world will require an understanding of humanity. And he said, for the first time, whilst I understood the cognitive value of team coaching, he said, for the first time do I realize, and he said that I know it takes a village to raise a child. And he said, similarly, I have a sense that it takes a team to lead an organization. And I think that is something that really resonated with me. The graphic that you see in front of you is one that I chose purely because I think a lot of us felt this way when the crisis hit. We stumbled, we tried to find our own footing, and I think we all went into a place of vulnerability. But I think there's also a piece around, there was a paradox through the conversations that I heard. So people talked about being energized by this and seeing opportunity, and then others talked about feeling really anxious, feeling fearful. And I think that was a huge acknowledgement. And one of the deep insights I got from working with the team was this thing about being comfortable with discomfort, to embrace and understand uncertainty. And it was for the first time that it was recognizing that we don't have control over a lot of things. And one of the leaders said that actually vulnerability is something that I understand differently now, and I understand it as appropriate vulnerability. Because I also have a sense that I need to have boundaries around my vulnerability. And I think what came through is that leaders really cancel their coaching sessions during this period. And that said a lot to me in terms of asking for the support and asking for the help that they needed. I think it was about acknowledging the pressures that each one of them were facing. It was for the very first time that I had leaders in a team session talk about the fact that they combined home and work life in one conversation. And they talked about the merging of the two and the lack of barriers and what that meant for them. A lot of them started talking about concerns about aging parents. It was the first time that people dwelled into family beyond just my children and the little bit that they shared. A lot of clients also asked about, how do I calm my brain? How do I calm myself? And there was a keen sense of understanding this thing about resonance, is that if I can't do it for myself, how is it that I'm going to support people through these challenging times? And also a sense of self-awareness that was beyond what I normally heard people talk about, which was, I recognize these are my strengths. These are real challenges that I'm finding. These are gaps that I have. Can we talk about this? It was very, very much from a forthcoming place, getting to the point much quicker than I found pre-COVID conversations. And the thing that stood out most was a lot of them thought about their mortality, understood that I'm not here forever, and started talking about their health concerns. So for me, the appropriate vulnerability is an interesting choice of words, because it does say that it's nuanced, and it does talk to what is useful from a leadership perspective to share. Because I think Professor Naudé talked about is during times of crisis, people are looking for safety. And when your leader is calm, you trust your leader. And I think Godfrey also talked about the fact that we have to create a safe space, trust for people. Otherwise, they drop into a space where it's chaotic for them and they feel unsafe. And I think there's a piece around reciprocity and understanding that if I can admit to my own vulnerability, I can invite other people to talk about it. Leaders for the first time talked about, initially the first month into COVID, people really admitted that they have had sleep disturbances. But what I found is as people started opening up and recognizing that this is something human and it's not only me, they started talking about eating habits, sleep disruptions. And another thing that there was empathy around was that if I'm working so many long hours, I recognize that my colleagues and the people that I work with are also putting those number of hours in. I think the other thing that stood out for me is language. Suddenly the words that were being used pre-COVID suddenly took on a different meaning. So, for example, there was much more ease in using the word fear than ever before. I don't think I heard fear being stated that explicitly. And I think what has shifted is we came from a world where we connected with people around their technical capability, the profits that we can make, and we shifted into one very naturally of relationships. And very deeply people understood that connect is so important. I think one leader said that I can feel that my mind shift has shifted around people and how I thought about people, and elements of trust don't just happen if the connectivity isn't there. I mean, words such as intent, the reason that I do it, how does it connect to my purpose? Courage, what is required of this word called courage, and creating safety for people. I mean, I don't think it was a word that I heard within the boardrooms, is that our role is to create safety for people. 2 weeks into, 2 weeks ago, I worked with an executive team, and essentially pre-COVID in the team coaching sessions, they worked out 5 key things that they wanted to focus on. And their first choice then was clients. Then they had colleagues, courage, innovation. And 2 weeks ago when I asked them, what would the priority change? And they said most certainly, and they went away in a room and they came back and they said, actually care for colleagues is the one that should be a priority and right on top. Then come clients, then comes courage and innovation, and collaboration would follow from there. So this was for me really very encouraging, because I think people are starting to recognize that. And I think in business reviews, what I found was it was profits always at the top, then customers, conversations, and people came last if there was enough time. And I'm finding now that people are wanting to put the people agenda right on top, then customers, and then profits. And I think this is a big mind shift. I think the other thing is, a client said that these shifts must guide us to purposefully shift how we work together and align our intent. And I asked him, what do you mean by that? And he said, actually, I don't know that our intent is always translated into the impact that we make. It's all espoused theory rather than what people truly experience. And he said, I want people to experience the impact aligned to the intent that we talk about, and feel that trust. They must trust in us. The other piece, the other things that people touched on very easily was aspects of spirituality, whether it be religion or secular. I mean, a lot of clients started saying, I find I want to be spiritually connected to something. These are things that I'm starting to engage with. I'm finding strength. I'm finding courage in those places. So, I mean, a question for you is, what strengths have emerged for you and guided you during this period that you were unaware of? Another client talked about the fact that the word value add means something very different now. He said, we talked about value proposition and the value add we want to have to, we want to impart. And he said, now I understand that it's from the eye of the client. That's what value creation is about. And he said, our organization, our values and our purpose must be aligned to the value that we bring to all stakeholders, not just the conversations around stakeholders. And he talked about words like passion. And I'm sure right now, if I had to pause and I had to throw in a word like love into this conversation, none of you would even raise an eyebrow because it's become so human. We've all been humanized by this crisis. And that for me is very encouraging. I mean, what I'm finding is that people have also said that, you know, in the past things were concepts like agile leadership. And right now, I'm starting to practice agile leadership. I'm starting to understand what it really means through experience. We talked about agility, and I worked with a team of 2 years ago, and they came up with a framework that guided them around decision making. And it was interesting that Prof. Naudé also touched on this. And essentially what they now did when they reviewed it in the team coaching session a few weeks ago, is they said, actually none of that works, we have to re-look that. And we realized that actually we don't make decisions as fast as we needed to. We say we make decisions, we walk away from them, and then we question our own self-belief and we doubt them. And they started talking about how it feels for the people that they lead when they aren't able to be decisive. And they recognize what agility, flexibility, adaptability means now, and truly living it. I mean, the other big, I think the word that has emerged is, and I think Godfrey and Professor Naudé touched on it, is this concept of privilege. And I think it's been a big aha for a lot of leaders to start understanding what it means to be at a certain level, what advantages come with it. And I think privilege has also become much wider in that it's more encompassing. It includes elements of poverty, race, disadvantage. And I'm very encouraged that those conversations are starting to naturally come into the space of leadership, because it's it's conversations that have never really been put on the table. I mean, another word that has come up, which people struggle with, was systemic. And a lot of leaders said it's for the first time that I feel that I look beyond the company and I look beyond myself. And I start looking at how things impact not only globally, but I start looking at societies and communities within which we operate. And and he asked, how did we talk about purpose before if that was not where we were focusing on? I started understanding this concept of nested systems. We talked about it before, but started understanding that nested systems are the people that work in our organizations. And if we're not connected to those systems, then what are we doing? How are we leading? So they're talking about an expanded view. They talked about the compounded crisis and VUCA and what that means for them. And I must say, from the VUCA framework, a lot of the things that stand out more is uncertainty and ambiguity for people. Those are the two big ones that people are talking about. And they also recognize, I think leaders have started recognizing, is that we're not in a space of complexity. We actually have fallen into a space of chaos. And some people even said it felt like we went off the tracks. And what was comforting is that this is global. It's not just me, it's not just us. And starting to understand that you have to take cognizance of multiple systems and as they shift and grow and what they need of you to move with them. And if you don't do that, there's also an opportunity loss. And I think Godfrey talked about the sustainability. And that's a responsibility of an organization. So they talked about the interdependence of all stakeholders and bringing everybody into a conversation. One team talked about how many chairs would be empty in their team sessions because they didn't bring those stakeholders into the conversations when we did business reviews, when we talked about vision and mission. The other thing is people want to, one leader said, I can't believe how many people want to collaborate and be creative and co-create. So why hasn't it been happening? Perhaps there's something in the way we're doing things that hasn't allowed that. And I think Gregory Batesman in 1972 already talked about the seamless web. And the leader that talked about understanding the systemic implications now said for the first time he feels more attuned to things. He said, I recognize how much was disconnected in the way we were approaching things. So this slide is one that I think is a metaphor for all of us. And I think it also talks to the humanity of us as human beings. And all of us have been a ship, and all of us had turbulent waters, chaotic waters. All our ships have wobbled at some time in the last. And one of the leaders said that, I'm a leader. And I asked him, what does a Pukka leader mean? And he said, actually, in the Indian language, Pukka means to be genuine. The real McCoy, I think we refer to it as authentic. And he started talking about his legacy and what he stood for and how will he be talked about beyond the pandemic. How will he be remembered as leading during the crisis? And a lot of leaders said that I feel I'm being tested right now. Am I really living all those things that I talked about before? And I understand that this is not just about my knowledge, my experience, the stripes that I've earned, but actually it's now about gaining my own deep insights, recognizing I don't have consultants, I don't have theories and books that I can draw on during this time. I have to dig deep. And in digging deep, I found that I could reboot my own leadership operating system. He talked about really being connected to the present and talking about the fact that how challenging that is. Because as a leader, your mindset is always running to the future and what I must do and what we must do. And he said it was very challenging to ground yourself and say, what is required of me now by the people that I lead, by the organizations and by our customers. And was really concerned if he could fulfill all of those things. And I think those are moments of real vulnerability, and to be able to share them, I think suggests real growth. I think another leader talked about the fact that I've learned how to understand myself, and I've learned my own leadership development during a crisis. I've had to do things on the hoof, and I've understood I had to very quickly recognize there's an opportunity here for me. And rather than what fear was telling me to do was resist this, I chose to embrace it. As fearful as I was, I chose to embrace it. I tried to understand it. And he said it accelerated some of my leadership capability from a mastery perspective. And it's something that would never have happened had this crisis not happened. And I think Godfrey talked about the role of a coach. And I think this was a real aha moment for me, because he said, as a coach, you were my thinking partner, and that's what I needed during this crisis. And what I started recognizing is that actually I think coaching is a very powerful learning technology for leaders during VUCA, during uncertain times, standing besides, not judging, providing some guidance. And I say this particularly because I think there's been a lot of criticism of coaches and being asked, what were you doing during the 2008 crisis? How are you helping leaders then? Did you help them see what perhaps they might have been doing and how that might have impacted economies and people more broadly? So I think one of the leaders said he found that more important than anything during this crisis is self-leadership. And I think Godfrey talked about that as well. I think the 3 points that stood out for me that I can gain insights from that I would like to share with you is, number one, a lot of people talked about impermanence and understanding that nothing remains static. And as much as we know that cognitively, I think it was a deep realization that, and we were thrown into understanding what impermanence means. The understanding that actually I've lost people, the fear that I might lose people. And what I found really interesting is in some of my team sessions, we started off with meditations. And very interestingly, I sometimes get asked, can you extend the meditation time? And if we have a break, they say, can we start with a few minutes of meditation? Which is starting to tell me that leaders are connecting back to themselves. And when you connect back to yourself, I think there's a smaller chance of you self-deceiving. Because if you're on this journey already of intent of a higher consciousness, I think you have to hold yourself accountable. And I think there's an acknowledgement of that deep connect. I think the other thing that Godfrey talked about also was empathy. And I think empathy, I've realized, is very nuanced. So we've been talking about empathy at a surface level and how we offer it to each other. But I do think that it needs to be offered differently to people. And that came out during the crisis. I think there's compassion that is needed with empathy. And I think, again, I think Professor Naudé talked about the fact that we might all be in the same boat, but not in the same way. And if you don't have, sometimes you can't empathize with people because we're too far away from people's realities. And I think to have compassion is something that is easier to then offer to people. So there are a few quotes that I'd like to share with you that clients shared with me. The one said, I've come to value emotionality of everything. So I've understood melancholy now, I've understood sensitivity, and above all, I value people now. The other one said, I don't only care about what people put on the table. I now also care about who's sitting on the chair. And for me, that is very encouraging. It's the acknowledgement of people. Hi, sorry, have I disconnected?
No, you're still connected, but your screen is not sharing the slides anymore.
Apologies for that. Is it back on?
Yes, we're back on. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. So I think the third one is finding meaning. There's been a lot of conversations around trying to understand what is my purpose, why am I here? Some people have talked about this concept of noble purpose and saying, you know, it's something that I now want to delve into a lot deeper and I want to understand it a lot more. And I also want to have an agenda that is bigger than just finding security for myself and talking about profits and the company. And one leader said that I actually now feel like I was a bit of an imposter. I was copying people before. I now I'm starting to feel a lot more genuine. And I think part of, you know, I worked with a client and we put some things together previously, but what was quite interesting is that 10 days ago, we started embracing and we started looking at what are the management tools that we've been using and the fact that they're not very appropriate right now because we in chaos, somewhere between chaos and complexity, and those tools don't help us. So we started looking at things like scenario planning, we started looking at brainstorming. And again, those were very challenging given that we're not together with each other. I think there are some things that will emerge that you have to be together to be able to do. But the one thing that we used is first principle thinking. So the client started talking about the fact that, you know, I had to test, we're having to test our understanding about business, our clients. And it's quite interesting. Salomé talked about the 3 R's, and I think she referenced it from somewhere else. So it seems like everybody's talking about 3 R's is a pattern that I'm seeing, and also 3 things. And what's interesting is that our brain loves to work from 3 places. It can take 3 points in very healthily and integrate it very easily. So it's quite interesting that naturally we're gravitating to what is useful for us. And a client talked about the fact that we were initially in response rate and we all wore masks and we were doing physical distancing. But there was also a realization that the connectivity to government and the guidance that we seek from them is an important aspect. They also talked about the fact that we have to review everything we know. We want to move forward. And we started talking about this from an individual perspective and a collective team perspective, because the two are so closely connected. We then also started talking about how do we restore the business? How do we start working in a place where we don't have control? what is it that we do have control on? And they started saying what they want to do is press the refresh button. So they can start looking at things very differently, understanding that we have to re-look customer needs, we have to re-look the assumptions that we make, how we deliver, who we deliver to, and what is it we need to be cognizant about. And a lot of people talked about refreshing themselves, starting to admit what they need and what will make them effective, where they're finding themselves less effective. They also started talking about the fact that we talk a lot about team, but none of us actually reached out to each other during the period of respond. We were all trying to do things by ourselves, and we actually reinforced a silo, even though we talk a lot about team. And I think it was what Professor Naudé talked about, is that we get into ourselves. And sometimes we need somebody to help us to actually move out, because we, as leaders, we have to ask what is required of me now, what is it that I need to step into now, and what is the direction that I need to provide now for people and guide them, because that's what they're looking for me from. And I think one of the leaders talked about rebounding, and what does that mean? And he said, for me, the first thing about rebounding is, yes, I recognize it as a leadership team. We have to craft a new vision. And you know, it's interesting because the debate is out whether how many people and who do we include, or do we just do it by ourselves as an executive team. We recognize perhaps short term we have to do it, but also said that rebound means that we have to be disciplined around the behaviors that we had in respond, because that's what responsible leadership will be about. Because this pandemic is going to become an endemic once the vaccine is out and we start moving forward. And what would refocus be? And for him, he talked about refocus really being about a couple of things. He said we have to review our HC policies and procedures. He said the way we've been working with people, recognizing people, rewarding people, we've really just been valuing their contribution. We don't value people as well. And everything must talk to the fact that we value people and their contribution. So that's a big shift that they want to take forward. We must define post-COVID the new business model. And one of the key learnings that another client shared with me is that they worked very much within business units, quite intact. And he said, during this crisis, we fund small businesses, and we realize cross-functional work becomes absolutely key. And he said, when we started doing that and we collapsed some of those barriers, he said even the conversations at board level were very different, in that we, the people who are so-called experts within those fields, are now starting to provide the direction that the board needs to consider. And the next piece was building social and environmental capability. And I think
May I ask you to close in a minute if you don't mind?
Yes, sure. And then my last point is building key strategic partnerships. So I think Godfrey again alluded to the importance of stakeholder connectivity way beyond what we traditionally looked at stakeholders. So those were some of the key insights, lessons that I picked up through my coaching conversations that I thought would be useful to share with you. Thank you, Salomé. And thank you all.
Thank you, Khatija. There's some really rich insights. I mean, I'm proud to note them, but there were many. So thank you also for your storytelling way in which you conveyed your message. We appreciate that. It's clear that you have a lot of passion for team coaching, and that you get teams to really open up and shift. So yeah, a reminder, something I will take back, is that it takes a team to lead an organization, and that we need to enhance and support every team leader to bring their best and co-create, use all the intelligences around the room to co-create new meaning. Absolutely. So thanks again for that. We don't have time for questions, but I'm sure they can ask Christelle for your email address should they want to engage with you further. Is that all right with you?
That's absolutely fine. Thanks.
Thank you very much. Appreciate that. So folks, our last speaker of the day is my very dear colleague, Nicky Terblanche. Nicky comes from a background of engineering and IT. He's also done significant years of training in coaching and education, as a doctorate in coaching. And I'd love to just read a little bit about Nicky to you. He's a senior lecturer and research supervisor on the MBA, the MPhil in management coaching, and PhD programs at the University of Stellenbosch Business School. His academic interests include both leadership coaching and information systems. He also runs an executive and leadership coaching practice, has published in several international academic journals, and regularly presents at international conferences. I mean, it's hard to get my colleague for a half an hour talk every week, because he's just so passionate about everything he does. So Nicky, I think what really intrigues Nicky the most is he's busy with creating, or has created, an artificial intelligence coaching chatbot, a real Vicky. Nicky created Vicky, and it took some 2 years, and I know she's now used for research, and that it will be soon commercially available. So Nicky, please, can you tell us a bit more about your experience during this crisis? What were the skills that leaders needed from your coaching practice, perhaps? And which skills do you believe we should hone towards recovery and, what's the other word? Flourishing. Thanks, Nicky.
Thank you. Thank you, Salomé, and welcome everyone again, and thank you for the opportunity. It's been really amazing listening to the 3 speakers today, really reminding me of, what we've been through, what we're going through, and how we support ourselves. So as Salomé mentioned, so I am an executive coach myself, but I'm also a researcher and an academic. I like to substantiate my opinions with actual scientific research, and that's what I believe we need in the coaching profession more of. So when this pandemic struck, end of March, when we went into lockdown, my wife looked at me. She's an artist, creative. So when the pandemic struck, she immediately started doing what she does best, and that's to create artworks based on what the pandemic provoked in her. And I was sitting there moping about a bit, because I couldn't go and lecture in person. And she said, so what are you going to do? So I thought, okay, let me do what I know what to do best, and that is to do research about this pandemic. So I went into my network, and I interviewed 26 executive and leadership coaches around the world, from the United States, from the United Kingdom, Australia, and South Africa. And I asked their opinion about, specifically at the beginning of the lockdown in April, what are you experiencing? What are you observing your clients experiencing? And how is coaching helping them? So the angle I want to bring to the discussion today is the power of executive and leadership coaching to help leaders during this time. And I think Khatija gave a wonderful introduction to this through her practical experience of what has worked. And I was very heartened as well with Godfrey clearly stating how executive coaching is helping him. So that is the angle I want to bring to you, but not my opinion. I want to tell you what my research findings were. But just to make sure we're all on the same page, what is executive and leadership coaching? I'm always surprised to see how many people that's not in our field don't quite understand it, or maybe you haven't been coached. So a very broad definition of it is that executive and leadership coaching is someone who's trained in terms of psychology, adult learning, experiential learning, leadership learning theory. So they're very well trained in those philosophies. They then go on a journey with a client through a structured process of reflection, but also of challenging their client to help them to understand who they really are, and to help them understand which goals they need to set, and then help them to achieve that. So I think you can already start seeing how this could be very useful during a pandemic, to have an expert who's trained in those aspects to help you go through the crisis. So let me just share my screen, and I want to show you the findings, some of the findings of my research. Can you see my screen?
Just put it on presenter view. Yes.
Okay, great. So I asked these 26 coaches, what are you observing your clients? What are they being challenged with? Now, you must understand that an executive coach works very personally, very closely with the client. So it is a unique insight into a leadership's world because there's confidentiality and trust. So what the coaches told me, and this is after analyzing 26 interviews, that there were 3 things that they saw. Leaders or managers were battling with managing their staff, managing their bosses, and managing themselves. And I'm not going to go through all the detail, but I want to highlight a few things. Obviously, you've all experienced this logistics around this crisis, right? Getting people to work off-site. Communication has been highlighted as very important. What they said is communicate even if you don't have all the answers, especially in the beginning. And I think as we're going out of the pandemic, we should not stop communicating as leaders because there's still a lot of uncertainty. But what was a great challenge, and I still think was this notion of productivity and creativity. How do you keep people motivated if you can't walk up to them? If you can't have those team building exercises, or if you just can't have the human productivity, the human touch element. So this is something that was experienced in the beginning, and I think it's an ongoing challenge. And this is where I think coaches can help their clients think through potential solutions. What was very interesting in terms of managing their bosses is an absence of leadership. So I don't want to harp on the negative, but it really struck me as if people are not if there are cracks in the system, then when a pandemic or a crisis strikes, they get amplified. I think we've seen sadly in our own country how corruption that's been rampant has suddenly just been exposed as still being there. And it was a very tragic thing that happened, in my opinion, in this country. But it wasn't just here. When I interviewed an executive coach in New York, she was specifically working with the healthcare workers. And I don't know if you remember, but in the beginning, especially the New York healthcare system really buckled under the pressure. And this coach said to me that the top leadership, and this comes from right at the top in America, as high as you want to go without mentioning names, there was inconsistency and there was a lack of strong leadership, and that filtered down to middle management and leaders who were unable to cope. And the coach had to step in and help. So in our country as well, absence of leadership, it really is a crippling effect. And I think Piet had some very practical demonstrations, and so did Godfrey, about what it means to lead at the top. Working from home, we all know what a schlep that is. One coach said that one client said, well, sorry, I have to go and iron my pajamas for tomorrow. So I even put on my nice shirt today for this presentation because I haven't worn it for a while. And it's actually just nice to feel in a professional space again. But a very important aspect, which I think a lot of people still suffer from, is fear of uncertainty and fear of loss of identity. It was striking when one of the coaches told me that her client was really in a crisis because he is a CEO of a company. He used to jet set all over the world, ordered business lunches, and now he's stuck at home helping to school the kids. So for you as a leader and a manager, what is your identity? Have you built an identity around who you are as a secure person inside yourself? Or is a lot of that to do with the fact that you are that when you walk into your corner office during the day, that people bow down to the boss, which is now not happening. So I think this pandemic really brought out the sense of, do you know who you are really? Are you your title of your job, or are you something beyond that? So those were some of the challenges people faced. Some of that I think might have subsided, but some of them are still with us. Then I asked the coaches, what role do you think coaching played? And I, again, analyzed the data, and 3 themes came out. Executive coaches at the beginning of the pandemic, and I think now, help their clients to reflect. Reflection, reflection, reflection. They also support their clients. They supported their clients, and they do still now, but then they also challenge their clients. So let's look at these in a little bit more detail. I think one of the most important things was to increase self-awareness. When you're struck by a pandemic like this, are you aware of your trigger points? Are you aware of your vulnerable spots? Are you aware of the things that make you anxious? Or on the other side of your strengths? And I think we forget about those things when you're suddenly faced with fear. But the coaches were able to just slow down the situation, to say, let's just take a break. Let's just stop and reflect on this and get in touch again with who you are. What are your strengths? What you might not have been in a pandemic before, but what have you done in the past that's worked for you? So it's about slowing it down and understanding really who you are. They help the clients think through how to manage their people, how to be innovative. It's just a bit of brainstorming and problem solving. In terms of supporting their clients, in the beginning, I think coaches are not psychologists, right? We don't deal with pathology and we don't help solve people's past issues, but a lot of coaches moved into a space of really holding and supporting their leaders that they were coaching. It's lonely at the top. It's even lonelier at the top if you sit behind a Zoom screen. So this is really the time where leaders can need someone, I believe, that's trained in helping them just feel emotionally supported and help them think through their problems that they maybe for themselves have gotten stuck with. But importantly, a good coach is not a coach if it's just a feel-good, fluffy conversation about everything's so wonderful and you're such a wonderful person. We challenge our clients, right? So in a safe and respectful space, we provide different perspectives and we ask our clients, but have you thought of this and that? You might say, I hear you talking about this, but you also said something else. So what's going on here? So coaches challenge their clients to think holistically, which is the second point. And many of the speakers today have mentioned this. We cannot solve, we haven't been in this situation before, so the problem solving we used before may not be sufficient. So coaches challenge their clients to think about the future through holistic thinking. These were some of the themes that came out. Then I did something else. I then looked at, I did quite a thorough literature review about crisis management skills. So what skills do you need to flourish in a crisis? And again, some of these might not be relevant now because we're moving towards the end of the pandemic, or are we? I guess that's the other question. But let's just quickly go through this. So the literature tells us that decisiveness is very important, even if you don't have the answers. And that was what Piet was saying. Democracy doesn't work in this setup. You have to be decisive and show the way. So decisiveness, but you also have to be flexible. As new information arrives, you have to be able to move between that space of chaos and complexity that Khatija spoke about, the Knieven framework, and bring the new information in to be flexible. You have to inform and communicate. That can't be emphasized enough. But you have to solve problems, real practical problems you have to solve. You have to manage innovative and creativity, because you solve problems when you're innovative and creative, right? So as a leader, how do you manage this? How can you promote it in your people? Planning and organizing personnel, the logistics of that. One of the people that I interviewed, she said one of her clients had to move an entire call center of 200 people from the office to their homes. Some people carried desktops, big old PC towers under their arms, and they got it working. So it's about the logistics around that. You have to motivate people. Even if you don't feel motivated yourself, you have to understand their personal circumstances, difficulties they face, and find a way to motivate them. You have to manage teams and team building, scanning the environment, strategic planning, looking forward. How can we actually not waste this crisis, as the famous quote of the day is. Networking and partnering. So just because you're stuck, well, remember, this is general crisis management skills, but I think even now more so, you have to find a way to build new networks and new partnerships that will allow you to execute on your new strategies. You have to be able to do decision making, so it links to decisiveness. And then in mindfulness, so don't do all of this just as a war leader who just plows ahead. You have to be mindful, which is a broad term for really being cognizant of your own wellness, the people around you, and generally about what's happening on the broader scale. So these are the crisis management skills. Then I took the aspects of coaching that my research uncovered that help people. So reflection, support, challenges, self-awareness, people management, all these things. And I just overlaid them in terms of how coaching can help and how coaching is helping people during the pandemic. And you can see that there's quite a map here. So coaching is helping with mindfulness and decision-making and scanning environment. These are what my coaches told me are one of the most important things. And of all the crisis management skills, the only ones that didn't come up is decisiveness and networking and partnering. And it could just be for the sample that I chose. So, and I'll stop sharing my screen now. The point I wanted to show you here is just that as a leader, you need support during this time. I think coaching is often an underrated tool and intervention that can help leaders. And my research has shown that during the pandemic, it can be very powerful. So, so what does it mean? So on the one hand, I'm encouraging people to become coaches. I mean by that, not maybe becoming a professional coach, although there's scope for that as well, but you as a leader to become more like a leader as coach, maybe to bring coaching approaches into your leadership style, which means employing some of these things that I've spoken about, but also to employ the services of a coach to help you during this time and to help you understand what it is like to be a coach, and maybe bringing some of that into the mix. So yeah, that was just a short overview of some of the insights I got through my research and how I personally believe that coaching during and after the pandemic is a very powerful tool that should be utilized by leaders, as confirmed by Godfrey as well. Thank you, Salomé.
Fantastic, Nicky. I always admire that all of your work is underpinned so very, very well. And you've also summarized and integrated, by the way, a lot of what was said today. So I appreciate that a lot. So I remember years ago we used to say manage self, then others, then your customers, and you remind me of that again today. Manage self, then manage others, but also manage bosses. And we can also coach our bosses without them even knowing if they get difficult, right? So thank you for that. I'd love for two things to happen. Just any questions to Nicky can be posed right now. And then I also want him to just follow up with a few minutes of sharing with you what we offer on campus at the USB for professional coaches. So any questions to Nicky? Here is it.
There's a hand up, Salomé.
I can't see that. Can you guys? Janine. Hi, Janine. You're welcome.
Hello. Yes, I was quite, thank you, Nicky. That was really very interesting. In terms of the micromanagement, I actually know of a previous client of mine had people filling in hour by hour timesheets so people could account for their activities. And that obviously shows the lack of trust, I suppose. But I was quite curious to know, the coaches that you spoke with, have any of them started or implemented any new techniques? Was there a call for anything that wasn't currently being used in terms of innovation, etc.? Because I mean, this is a new thing, right? A new crisis, a new experience. So has there been anything new coming out of that?
Thank you, Janine. Yes, I actually asked that question to the coaches. It wasn't part of, I'm busy working on another paper about coaches' responses and specifically asked them, how are you coaching differently? I think the one very powerful aspect of this pandemic and our influence coaching is the acceptance of this mode of coaching, virtual coaching. You know, I've always been in favor of that, partially because I live 100 kilometers outside of Cape Town. So for me, the driving is such a thing. And I also realized, though, that it's very powerful. Even this medium is as powerful as sitting face to face with a person. So I think that will change the coaching industry in the fact that it's becoming more acceptable to coach like this. In fact, just last week, a client that I coached many years ago in South Africa, he's now based in Kenya, contacted me again and said, please, can I resume my coaching sessions with you? So I think that's one powerful thing. The mode of coaching is changing and it's becoming more acceptable. I think also coaches that did well during this time are ones that have a deeper schooling in things like existentialism and psychology and have a broader repertoire than just the basic goal setting and achieving goal setting. And that is why maybe linking to Salomé's point about our program, you know, the MPhil in management coaching is a 2-year program where we really immerse you in a lot of theory, deep theory and deep thinking. So I would say that coaches, and when you as a leader go and look for a coach to coach you, make sure that you find someone who has deep fundamental understanding of the how can I say, the more deeper and psychological and philosophical aspects of coaching, because the standard tools might not be sufficient to help you through this.
Thank you for that, Nicky. There is one more question here. Nicky, perhaps, okay, just type. Can Nicky perhaps provide some examples of leadership deficits being amplified in lockdown and how to deal with them? That's from Elissa.
So leadership deficits and how to. So remember, this is through the experience of the coaches that I interviewed. If I remember correctly, it seems to be where people were promoted in positions where they were not ready for the position. Now, my PhD was on career transitions, and I studied the phenomenon of people being promoted and how when you move to a higher level of complexity, it takes a while to settle in. So unfortunately, some leaders were just very unlucky in that they were promoted very recently. They haven't had the chance to fill that role. But it was about basically not being able to exhibit those crisis management skills, being indecisive, not having empathy with employees. I remember this one person who works in a large insurance organization said, well, all our leaders are actuaries and CAs. They're very good with the numbers, but as soon as it comes to the people stuff, they fall flat. They don't know how to do that. So I think leaders that were not well-rounded in terms of their emotional intelligence and in terms of being able to manage complexity are the ones that, that showed up in deficit. Those are just two of the things that I can think of now.
Okay. Thank you, Nicky. Any more questions to Nicky? Okay, so President of Comensa, thanks Dr. Nicky for your insightful sharing of the outcome of your research. While I appreciate the definition and meaning of executive coaching from a global perspective, what does it actually mean from a South African perspective? Definition and meaning of executive coaching.
Yeah, I'm not sure it's that different globally to the South African perspective. I think, you know, we have maybe different leadership challenges in South Africa, but the essence of coaching, which is to help people become self-aware, well aware of themselves and the others and the environment, and then through a process of reflection and experimentation to find answers to their own problems is quite universal. It was interesting because I interviewed coaches in 4 different countries, and there wasn't really that much difference between the things that people experienced in the different countries. So I also a while ago did an African coaching survey where I sent out a survey to understand what coaching is like in South Africa in Africa compared to the rest of Europe. And I think in South Africa and the rest of Africa, because we have different challenges, coaches employ slightly different approaches, but the outcome at the end, I suspect, is fairly similar. So yeah, coaches trained in the South African context would maybe be more aware of our environment, and because of that would be able to help their clients a bit better. I hope that answers the questions to some extent.
Has he answered your questions, folks? And is there any more to Nicky? So Nicky, thank you for that thorough research. Thank you for turning it into learning all the time. Really completing the evidence-based circle, evidence coach-based circle. So you're not just learning and reflecting on things, but publishing it and sharing it in teaching rooms. You're a true scholar of coaching. I appreciate that. So,
thank
folks,
you, Salomé.
If there's any more, Liesl Marie just one agree with you, Nicky, on the last wonderful closure. As a coach, I agree fully with having a deeper understanding of psychological theories. Although not being a psychologist, understanding the fundamentals of the psychology of grief helped me as coach tremendously in supporting my clients. So, wonderful. Thank you.
So maybe just one last point on that. You know, I'm always amazed how when you have a toothache, a throbbing toothache, you don't think twice about going to the dentist. You know, when you're not feeling well, you go to the doctor. Although during the pandemic, our local doctor in the village said his income dropped by up to 60%. So suddenly people weren't as sick as they used to be. But I think as a leader, I don't know why we think as leaders we have to do it on our own. They are well-trained experts in the field, executive coaches who spend lifetimes mastering the skill. So I know I'm sounding a bit like an advertisement here, but I really think that coaching is a powerful intervention that can help leaders far beyond what they think is possible. So I'll leave it at that.
All right. Nicky, one more question. You can't yet run because you've got time and this one came in. Great question. More questions are coming in for you. How has your research looked at the cultural differences in coaching, as I find that these have an impact?
Yes, my research didn't specifically ask that question, so I can't answer that empirically. But of course, it has an impact. And Salomé would also tell you that we have had over 200 alumni on our master's program, and each one has to complete a research project. And we have done several research studies into the effect of cultural differences in coaching. So I won't give you a complete answer now, but it is something that we definitely have to consider, the cultural differences between, in South Africa especially. So that is important. But my research didn't focus on that specifically.
Thank you very much for that. Okay, one more question. Susan Govender, during this time of crisis and uncertainty, how important is authentic and charismatic leadership in fostering trust?
Yes, so when we go into leadership theory, so that is what Piet also alluded to. He said he's a theologian and not a leadership expert. Can you all hear me? Things seem to have frozen a bit.
I can hear you, although you do freeze sounding. I can hear you.
Okay, I think my internet is a bit slow. But charismatic and what was the other one? You know, there's so many different leadership styles. I am personally quite skeptical of assigning a specific leadership attribute. There's at least 10 different leadership styles through the ages. I would not, because it's a complex and nearly chaotic situation, I would steer away from promoting a specific leadership style in this moment. I think it really is whatever the presenting situation is, a leader should step up to that. And a real leader can switch from being authoritarian to a charismatic to a servant leader. I think we must be careful to put labels of theories on you should be like this or that. The situation is way beyond complex. And this is why knowing yourself and having a repertoire of skills is what's more important, because you'll be doing some of those leadership styles without even knowing it if you really are a true leader.
Awesome. And one fun question. What does Vicky do?
You'll have to come to the next breakfast to see that. It's an artificial intelligence coach that helps people with goal setting, but we're not going to go into that now. You can follow me on LinkedIn and I post some stuff.
Follow Nicky. This is the way to go. I think she's still doing her module on emotional intelligence, as far as I'm here from Nicky. She must still pass that one.
Indeed.
Thanks, Nicky, very much. Thank you, everyone. That was just marvelous. This morning was just such rich learning, and I really need to say, appreciate everyone who's in the room, everyone who invested this time, and every speaker who enlightened us and shared their wisdom so openly and abundantly today. Thank you very much. We are going over to sharing some gifts now. So stay in the room, please. I'd like to call on, we told you earlier there's some lovely gifts. So I'd like career leadership, our career leadership representative here today, to please announce who is their gift winner and also what was the criteria for that.
Okay, morning everyone. So the criteria for our gift is really who mentioned or spoke about competencies that employers would look for in the future. And the person that we found actually commented the most about that was Susan Govender. So she gets a pre-coaching session, an assessment of 1 hour. So Susan, congratulations, and we'll send you some of the detail after the session.
Awesome. Thank you, Janine. That's quite abundant of you. And this lady is a sure coach, really. So have fun with her. Thank you. Then I'd like to call on USB Ed. USB Ed has kindly donated 4 branded gifts. And I think it will be Kerry.
Thanks, Salomé. Hi, everybody. It's Kerry Smoy from USB Ed. I just want to take this minute, if I can, Salomé, to punch USB Ed for 1 second. So basically, we are the private short course arm of the USB. So we're also within the university. And our management and leadership development courses are quality assured by the USB and then certified by the university. So on the one hand, we've got our open courses, which are basically off-the-shelf courses for individuals and companies. And then on the other hand, we offer customized solutions. So that by this, I mean that we actually build deep relationships or learning partnerships with organizations. And so we go in and we actually co-create bespoke development solutions that actually strengthen their learning culture and align their long-term strategies. We've got an office in Botswana and we operate across 13 other African countries. And since lockdown, we converted all of our programs to remote learning, so via Zoom or via MS Teams. And I'm really happy because from next year, we're actually going to be offering 4 unique modes of delivery. So depending on, offering various levels of flexibility. So that will be face-to-face, remote via Zoom or MS Teams, blended, so a bit of both. You'll have some remote learning and some face-to-face, and then we also have pure online, which is obviously pre-recorded. So if anyone wants more information, we are obviously in touch with all of our alumni chairs in the various areas, but for more info, you can visit the website at www.usbed.com. So thank you for that opportunity to punt. And yes, we have 4 branded gifts. So there'll be a little sort of a goodie bag of USB Ed gifts, and I'm going to be running basically a lucky draw. So it'll be a bit of a surprise, and 4 lucky people will be receiving an email from me. So thank you very much for having USB Ed here, and Salomé for your hosting. I must say it's been extremely insightful. Thank you.
Thank you, Kerry, and thank you for the gifts. We really appreciate that.
Pleasure.
A very trusted partner of ours, USB Ed, and we work very closely together to offer people not just formal education, but also informal education. And accepting people who have done years and years of experience and maybe not necessarily have a qualification. So please apply online, utilize us. We'll accommodate you where we can. Thanks, Kerry. Okay, so I'd like to give the Institute of Futures Research the next opportunity to share their gift.
Hi, Salomé. Hi, Khatija from the Institute for Futures Research.
Hello,
I couldn't change my name, so I just represented the Institute for Futures Research today. But from my side, thank you very much. It was really insightful. We always encourage to see how coaching and futures thinking collectively come together so nicely, and that, one can almost not go without the other. So from our side, we're giving away what we refer to as a virtual coffee with a futurist. And the person that we've noted that have had lots of foresight comments and questions is, I think, the chairman of Comensa NPC. He's named Comensa NPC on today's session. I think he mentioned his name is Makadi. So Makadi, from our side, we look forward to connecting with you and setting up a virtual coffee with a futurist. So thank you very much for the opportunity.
Awesome. Thank you very much for that. And well done so far, Susan and Mukadi. You are well deserved of your gift. And I then want to go on to Khatija Saley. Khatija wants to gift a particular team with 2 times 2 hour sessions of team coaching. Khatija, do you want to make known who you've picked? Okay, I'll do it on her behalf. Khatija said that she wants to give her gift to the Cape Chamber of Commerce. That's the one team she wants to give a gift to, and that gift is quite precious. It's 2 times 2 team sessions with her. I asked you earlier, which intact teams are here today? Are there anyone here who are those 2 or 3 or 4 people available? Because I also have a gift for you in terms of an ebook and a team coaching follow-up session. But I'd like to hear from you. Who is in the room that is part of a team and have other members here presented? And whilst you're telling me that in the chat box, I'd like to go over to USB Alumni, who is handing out a very special gift as well. USB Alumni representative?
Yes, sorry, I was muted. Thank you, Salomé.
Hello, Christel.
Hi, Christel here from Alumni Office. My colleague is also online, Lizelle Kannemeyer and Shauna Cooper. All 3 of us are from the Alumni Office at USB. Our alumni consist of USB, the formal programs, as well as USB 8 alumni that Kerry so eloquently explained there earlier. So our choice today goes to Debbie Naudé. She is actually an 8 alumnus. She's the Executive Development Program alumnus.
Yay!
Yeah. Yeah, Debbie is the CEO of MEDIS, and we really valued her comment. This gift goes for the application of knowledge into the workplace. And that is, we always look for that in our alumni, for sharing impact stories. How do we make impact in industry and society once we leave the USB or the building or the virtual rooms? So congratulations, Debbie. Your gift is 2,500 Rands worth of exclusive book voucher. So I hope you find value and the books to read in there.
Where's Debbie? I want you to see you jumping up and down a bit. We need energy here. All right, a lovely gift. Thank you, Christel.
Maybe I can just add, Salomé, if you bear with me, the South African, just to note that the South African Coaching News, the only coaching newsletter in South Africa, I believe, that was a gift from the editor to all participants today at the business breakfast. So this will, the first edition, which is a bumper edition in September, will be in your mailboxes soon after today, this afternoon or next week. And you will receive 4 editions for free: September, October, November, December. So September 1 will come now, and the following month, October, will be early in the month. So that's a huge gift that we thank you, SA Coaching News, Jacques Meiberg, for this generous gift. And I believe there's also included a discount for all business breakfast participants for 2021 subscriptions, if you wish to do that. So we will be in contact you around that. Thank you, Salomé.
Wonderful, Christel. Yeah, I think our colleague Jacques is one of the most awesome supporters of everything we do at USB. Also graduated with honors on our program, I think in just the third year of offering. So thank you, Jacques. We can always count on you, and we care for you. And then lastly, I want to ask people in the room, is there anybody? I've got as you know, my work is around working with teams, leadership teams, and specifically to help with alignment between strategy and culture. The way we do things and what we do, they need to be aligned, and especially how does one unpack the values that we hold close so that people can see that we're walking our talk. So if there's a team here or a member of a team that believe they can do with these books, there are 5 of them. You're very welcome to prompt Christelle in the chat box, and they will be sent to you. Christelle, is that it for the morning? Have I missed out on anything?
No, you've done it so well.
Thank you. I had great fun and I learned a lot. And so thank you to my marketing team members, all of our representatives here today that worked equally hard for this day. From everyone designing a logo to writing content to sharing gifts. Thank you so much. And Christelle, especially to you and Giselle for extraordinary work. We'll take care, everyone, and have a wonderful weekend.
Thank you,
Salomé. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.
Bye, everyone. Bye-bye.